Fallout is post-apocalypse. The end of the world has happened hundreds of years ago. But something else we also associate with Fallout just as strongly is the tongue-in-cheek humor. The quirky tone, the vibe that even though the world literally ended in nuclear fire, it's all just a bit funny really. And a big part of what gives that tone is the choice of music. Often, it's some soft, old-fashioned love song. Some crooner gently promising that he doesn't want to set the world on fire, he just wants to start a flame in your heart. That contrast, the apocalypse on one side, a tender love song on the other, is one of the most recognizable things about the entire series. It runs through the games, the trailers, the TV show. If you take away the vaults and the Pip-Boy and the bottle caps, that pairing is still one of the first things that comes to mind when you think of Fallout. That's the easy read on it, the Wasteland's little running joke. But that soft old music is doing so much more work than just being funny. It's worth pulling apart how the pairing started in the first place, and why it hits the way it does. That song, by the way, I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire, recorded by the Ink Spots in 1941. If you've touched a Fallout game in the last 20 years, it's soldered into your brain whether you like it or not. It's the sound of the loading screen, the sound of the intro, the sound of Galaxy News Radio drifting across the capital wasteland while you get shot at by a mole rat the size of a golf cart. And under all the reverb and the crackle, it is a straight-up, dead sincere love song. A guy telling a girl he's got no big ambitions, he doesn't need the whole world, he just wants her. That song was already haunted before Fallout ever got near it. The Ink Spots put it out in 1941, and it caught on, right around the time the actual world did. Pearl Harbor. Everybody shipping out. A sweet little tune about not wanting to burn anything down, playing on the radio while an entire generation went off to burn everything down. Fallout didn't write that irony. It found a song already carrying it and turned the volume up. Okay, how it got there in the first place? Back in 1997, the original Fallout was being built over at Interplay, and the guy in charge, Brian Fargo, had a completely different idea for the vibe. He wanted to open the game with Warriors of the Wasteland by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Big, loud, on the nose, a wink at Mad Max, which is where a lot of Fallout's leather and sand DNA comes from. And then somebody played him the Ink Spots, and he threw the whole plan out. His first pick was actually I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire. Couldn't afford it. Licensing those old recordings costs real money, and a scrappy RPG from a studio nobody had heard of didn't have it lying around. So they grabbed another Ink Spots number, Maybe, for the intro instead, and quietly slipped a nod to the song they really wanted into the game's dialogue anyway, because developers are petty in the best possible way. It took more than a decade to finally land the white whale. When Fallout 3 came out in 2008, there it was. The camera pulls back off a busted Radiation King radio sitting in a wrecked bus. The city opens up around it, Art Deco ruins, enlistment posters, a Brotherhood knight standing in the rubble, and over the top of all that decay, the Ink Spots are gently promising to start a flame in your heart. Then Ron Perlman's voice comes in with the line the whole series is built on war. War never changes. A love song, and then the sound of the world ending, back to back on purpose. That song's been welded to the franchise ever since. It's in Fallout 4, it's in 76, it's in the opening minutes of the TV show. You couldn't pry it loose with a crowbar, so it started as a happy accident and became a mission statement. But why does the accident actually work? Why does cheerful music over a graveyard land, instead of feeling like a joke that ran long, start with the world itself? Fallout isn't set in the past, it's set centuries in the future. 2287, whenever. But it's a future that got dreamed up by people standing in 1955. The bombs fall in a timeline that never left the atomic age. The cars have fins. The robots have that chrome ray gun optimism. Everybody's still promised a house, a fridge the size of a car, and a nice safe spot in a vault. The whole civilization is frozen mid-smile, right at the moment America was most convinced the future was going to be spectacular. The music is part of that freeze. Those crooners aren't background noise somebody picked because it sounded quaint. They are the actual sound of the culture that built the thing that ended the world. This was the soundtrack of the boom, the ad jingles, the dance halls, the picture of the good life, everybody was being sold. And the real joke is that the good life was wallpaper. It was covering the scariest decade of the century. The arms race was ramping up. People were digging fallout shelters in the backyard and teaching their kids to hide under a school desk from a hydrogen bomb. That warm, reassuring music was playing directly on top of a species-wide panic attack. So when Fallout drops it over a crater, it isn't breaking the mood. It's finishing a thought. The 50s already started. And look at the wider jukebox, not just the one famous track. Diamond City Radio, Radio New Vegas, Mojave Music Radio. The whole rotation sounds like a sock hop. Bouncy horns, easy harmonies, everybody's smiling. But listen to what they're actually smiling about. There's Butcher Pete, a swinging little foot tapper by Roy Brown, about a man going around hacking and whacking and smacking, which is either about murder or about something even less printable, depending on how charitable you're feeling. There's Crawl Out Through the Fallout, a chirpy doo-wop number where the big romantic gesture is reuniting with your sweetheart after the nuclear blast. There's Uranium Fever and Atom Bomb Baby, peppy toe tappers that treat the most terrifying weapon ever built like it's the hot new dance craze. And that last part is the whole trick, because it actually happened. Bethesda's audio director, Mark Lampert, has talked about why these songs slot in so cleanly. That back in the 50s, the bomb almost seemed like fun to people, and you can hear it sitting right there in the pop music of the time. Fallout didn't have to invent cheerful songs about the end of the world. It just had to go dig up the real ones. The entire playlist is grinning through something, which is a perfect fit for a world that grinned right up until the missiles launched. There's also just the sound of the recordings themselves. These aren't clean, remastered versions. They reach you the way old records do, a little muffled, wrapped in hiss and crackle, the voice pushing through from somewhere far off, and that texture does half the work on its own. A crisp modern pop song would sit on top of the wasteland like a mistake. A scratchy 70-year-old recording already sounds like a memory, like something that barely survived and is reaching you across an enormous distance. Before you've even caught the words, the format is telling you this is old, this is fragile, this comes from a world that's gone. The reason it truly lands, though, is the radio itself. You're not hearing this music the way you hear a movie score. Nobody's piping it into your ears from outside the story. It's coming out of an object, a real thing, inside the world, that a survivor built and aimed at the wasteland on purpose. Galaxy News Radio has a DJ, 3Dog, an actual guy in an actual booth, spinning these records because somebody out there still wants to hear them. New Vegas has Mr. New Vegas purring at you between tracks like the apocalypse is a late-night jazz set. Somebody is still broadcasting. 200 years after the last bomb, the old world is still on the air, still playing its love songs, still talking to listeners who mostly aren't there anymore. That's the part that gets you. The music is a ghost. It's the sound of a dead civilization that hasn't figured out it's dead, still humming the same tune it was humming on the last normal afternoon before the sirens. And you feel that most because of how you actually play these games. You spend a huge amount of Fallout completely alone, walking for real minutes at a stretch across empty ground with nothing but your own footsteps and the wind. The radio is the one voice keeping you company out there. So when that voice turns out to be a warm old song about love, it lands like a hand on your shoulder in the last place you'd expect one. The game makes you lonely on purpose, and then hands you the sweetest possible thing to be lonely with. And the series knows exactly what it's doing, because it hands you the other option right beside it. Turn the radio off, and the real score kicks in. The ambient stuff, Mark Morgan on the early games, Inon Zur later. Cold, sparse, menacing. Long, uneasy tones for when you're alone in a flooded subway, wondering what that noise was. That's the honest soundtrack. That's what the wasteland actually sounds like when nobody's performing for you. And then you flip the radio back on, and Bing Crosby waltzes in like nothing's wrong, and you get to feel both worlds grind against each other at the same time. The game gives you the dial and lets you choose your own heartbreak. Because the contrast doesn't make the wasteland cozier, it makes it lonelier. A grim wasteland with grim music is a theme park. It's exactly what you showed up expecting, so it slides right off you. A wasteland with a love song playing forces you to hold two things at once. the dead city in front of you, and the warmth in your ears that proves it wasn't always dead. The song is evidence. Evidence that people lived here, that they danced, that they had first kisses and slow songs. And somebody once meant every single word of, "I just want to start a flame in your heart." You can't mourn a world you never got to see. The music smuggles that world in through the back door, so you can miss it. New Vegas leaned all the way into this and cast a wider net, pulling songs across decades: Dean Martin, Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra, whatever fit a neon city, still clinging to the fantasy that Vegas means something. One of the writers has said he spent time driving around, flipping through 50s satellite radio, just hunting for the right tracks. That's the amount of care sitting underneath what looks at a glance like a throwaway gag. Somebody drove around listening to dead men sing so the ruins would feel properly haunted. And here's the proof of how load-bearing this whole thing is. When the Fallout TV show turned up in 2024, big budget, huge audience, a lot to prove. The very first thing it reached for was the music. The teaser trailer opened on a remix of, what else? I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire. The original recording comes back in the second episode, crooning away underneath one of the show's ugliest moments. Season 2 pulls Uranium Fever and Atom Bomb Baby straight off the game's radio stations. A brand new production, live actors, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the shorthand it used to tell you this is Fallout was a stack of the same old love songs and novelty numbers. The people making the show understood something basic about it. The music carries the tone. Take it out, and Fallout stops feeling like Fallout. So next time you're out there, pinned behind a rusted out car, health bar deep in the red, some horror shambling toward you, and that soft old voice comes on to tell you he doesn't want to set the world on fire, sit with it for a second. That song's doing a job. It's reminding you what the fire took. A world full of people who loved each other, who planned for a future, who lined up for their spot in the vault and believed, right up to the last second, that everything was going to be fine. So yeah, it's funny. The sweetest song in the world playing over the end of everything. But the reason that joke has lasted nearly 30 years, the reason it still feels like Fallout, is that underneath the smile, it's quietly breaking your heart. They were wrong, but the radio's still playing. And somehow, that's the saddest, most beautiful thing about the whole series.